So today I'm doing something a little different. This is definitely not true crime related. It's actually the opposite of a crime, isn't it? No. So I'm just doing this as an experiment. This is a book of poems by Jersey City's poet laureate Anne E. Wallace. I know if you say it fast, it sounds like her name is Annie, but she's not an Annie, she's an Anne. And the title of the book is Days of Grace and Silence, and it's about her, it's a chronicle, literally, of having long haul COVID. So, not the most cheery subject, but what book of poetry is really like terribly cheery? Didn't anybody read Sylvia Plath? Okay, so I think it is going to be easier. I have to read the whole book in a short time because she's doing a poetry reading in Jersey City, and I'm going to be doing the Q&A. So I need to be acquainted with the poems herewith. All right, so I'm just going to read a couple, and we'll just see how it goes. And if you happen to stumble on this because you are a long hauler or you're interested in the topic or poetry or just in Anne Wallace to begin with, then hopefully this will be entertaining to you. All right, let me settle back here because I don't want to be like too, I have a tendency to get a little close to the camera. Okay, here we go. She wrote these, by the way, in chronological order. They're published in chronological order in terms of like the beginning of COVID, which was so scary, just to not know what was happening and to be sick with COVID. So just giving you a little bit of background. All right, so this one is dated April 5th, 2020. It's titled In Danger. And it starts with a quote. Oh my God, this is the first time I'm reading it. It starts with a quote from Tiger King. Remember Joe Exotic? Well, that story went completely viral during that time period because everybody was home. Everybody was looking for something engaging to binge. And Tiger King was the thing. People could not stop talking about it. I can't believe these poems are not very like humorous to begin with. So this is really funny to see it start with that. Okay, so here's the quote from Joe Exotic. I went to work every day prepared to die in a tiger cage. Dying doesn't scare me at all. Okay, now here's her poem. We are all locked up inside, watching tigers on our screens, tigers kept in cages by men who may be unhinged, who go above the law for tourists who gape in awe at such danger so close. We all at home leave our wide mouths agape or back up our 6 paces, but we are feeling unhinged, so we plot the tiger's escape and their freedom instead of our own as we sit in our cages. We fail in our plans. The tigers, they are still barred in their cages, yet it is only now, with all of us stuck home in our places, that the tigers are finally safe where they are. I put a check mark on this one because I want to draw attention to that when I do the reading. Okay, here's another one, April 7th, 2020, so 2 days later. At the start of April, a body would be held a cold 2 weeks to be cremated in New York City, which means a family would wait those 14 burning days for an end to the start of a nightmare. That was a lifetime ago, last week, when only 300 New Yorkers, give or take, died each day, officially, of the pandemic. And those bodies still wait in trucks that hold 40 apiece, called into service when hospital morgues meant for a dozen or so filled just 2 weeks ago. The numbers go up and up yesterday to 731 known COVID deaths, plus the daily 200 who now die at home of undetermined causes with ailments like fever, like cough, like not being able to breathe. We are nearly 1,000 lost each day, but we do not like such ballpark math. But the morgues are full, and the refrigerator trucks, and the cemeteries, and the funeral directors drive vans that never sit idle or cool as they remove body after body after body. Nobody wants to think about how this all ends, but we really should just do the math. Whoa. That's another one that gets a check mark. Now that's really interesting, and I hope to bring attention to the fact that Anne's longtime partner is a funeral director. And I remember her talking about it during that time period as being so devastating, you know, just knowing what he was going through and the toll it was taking on him. And she had this kind of like inside awareness of what was happening in terms of the body count. Do the math. Math problem, that's the name of that one. Wow. All right, let's go on to the next one. April 9th, 2020, April mud. I sat in my yard today for the first time in weeks. No, the first time this spring. And as I sat, a light rain spattered around me. I sat a little longer, feeling the sky darken. The shadows grow sharp and the birds sing more brightly as spatters turn to drops. While I sat, men on Hart Island in airtight hazmat suits worked side by side in the rain, digging muddy trenches for fresh pine boxes. The men on Hart Island buried last month's dead, who waited 2 weeks alone, unclaimed, together in city morgues filled past capacity, to be interred in plain boxes on a wet April day while the birds in my backyard sang. All right, that one is very grim. And just reminding us of there was so much that was uncontrolled at that time. The amount of deaths were off the charts, and that meant that every system was overloaded. There weren't enough coffins. There weren't enough crematoriums that couldn't, I mean, just the thought of it is so horrific. We lived through something that was like wartime. That's what it felt like. Wow. That was April mud. To live deliberately, April 10th, 2020. When I walked round Walden Pond on a warm March day, I traced the footprint of the small cabin and wondered about Thoreau and his solitude, deliberate yet close to all he held dear. Days later, home in my city, my eldest simmered and coughed. I gathered her and her sister, pulled the door shut behind us, and spun a soft space where we might keep safe. We did not know then that the thick walls would hush and dim the sounds of the street beyond, quiet and quieter, and create an echo chamber for the cough unending of my fevered daughter. The cough resounded in each chime of my phone, the CNN, NPR, New York Times alerts. Texts from friends, calls from the doctor. We heard the world shudder as she, then I, grew sick and sicker. Alone in our city, I think of Thoreau, of his small pond and his long saunters, of his dear Emerson, who would come sit for a spell in the cabin in the woods and leave his friend replenished. When Thoreau emerged from the woods 2 years later, he was a changed man, returning to a static world. But as we fight for sleep, for air, for life, we have no idea what strange and silent world awaits our return. Possibility, April 11th, 2020. I plumb the depths of all we do not know, the unspeakable terror. Every night I am pulled along a path that ends in viral mass destruction. Each dream begins in possibility of a cure, of safety, until hope is dashed, dashed, and dashed again. My heart pounds me awake. I listen to remember where I am. And every night, my daughter's cough, dry, relentless, reminds me that we are not yet destroyed. A lot of what she was going through was not just her own illness, but the helplessness of watching her daughter also struggle. And so that's kind of a reoccurring theme in this book. A Safety Within, April 12th, 2020. We dwell in this quiet house, sealed tight from a world grown unfamiliar over long, breathless weeks. Dry, hot battles have waged within these walls, each day won or lost, with a steady flood of oxygen, to the rise and fall of body temps and the tight burn within my chest. These battles are small and also life and death, but 4 weeks in, the terror has grown familiar. Beyond the walls of my chest, of the beating hearts in this house, grows untamed terror, destruction, that we do not yet know, that has laid bare, will still lay waste to my neighbors, my friends, my city, and so far beyond, as we recover strength and stamina here inside and plot our return. I have begun to fear the vast weeping silence that we'll find outside. Now, what's also interesting is, of course, at this point, 4 weeks in, she didn't know it was going to be long COVID. Even the terminology wasn't there yet because we just didn't know. We didn't have the perspective of time to look back and say, this is actually a disease that can have long-term ramifications. And I think that there was a part of the medical community that was like, why aren't you better by now? Like, doubting to some extent whether or not these people who were suffering from long COVID symptoms were actually accurate in their reporting of their symptoms and the struggle that they were going through. I know that there was some piece of this that was seen as psychosomatic in some way. Now, Anne also had pre-existing conditions, which we learned later were connected to long COVID symptoms, for it like not to go away like it did for everybody else. All right, I'm going to read 2 more. Blessed Be, April 13th, 2020. The woman watched as her husband took his last breath. They were together, but it is small comfort to die at home during a pandemic. There was no peace for the man who left his wife sick, frightened, alone, with no money for a funeral, no money for someone to come and take his body. There was no solace for the wife when the police came, noted her loss, and left her illness, her grief, her love, lying still in their bed. There was too little left for a family that had nothing but love holding it together. There is no comfort in dying at home during a pandemic. Now, this is one, I want to ask her about this, if this was one that maybe she had insight to only because of, like I said, her partner being a funeral director and being the person responsible to go to people's homes and pick up bodies. I know that he did a lot of pro bono work or discounted work during that time. And I also know the toll that it took on him and other funeral directors during that time period. Just imagine, like, what do you do when you don't have the money to have somebody take the body away? It's like there's no money for cremation or just horrific circumstances. All right, wait, let me go on. Let me read this one. All right, maybe I'll read a couple more. How many minutes am I in? It's not even 15 minutes. Okay. This sounds interesting. So, and is also a professor at Jersey City. She's gonna kill me. New Jersey City University, NJCU. Sorry, my bad. Okay, I have to prep that ahead of time when I do the Q&A. So this one is titled "To My Students in the Time of the Novel Coronavirus." Does that sound a little bit of like in the time of cholera? Okay, so this is April 14th, 2020. I know you are struggling, that you had already fought and kicked to make it to spring break, to the week when we would all come up for air before the final push of a hard semester. But break this year was a last gasp, right before our class was sliced in two. Into before, into after, when the fragile balance of everything you were holding together while holding your breath shattered, as if a cat had walked across the shelf where your most precious pieces were perched and casually swatted them one by one to the floor. We are stuck here frozen, staring at the glassy shards, knowing we cannot scoop the 1,000 pieces into our hands and mold them back into January or February when life was sharp and fragile but not broken. I know you are struggling, and though I will not tell you this, I know you will continue to struggle. So much has shattered. I will not tell you because you are surrounded by shimmering dust that reflects off your face in ways that we could not see before. And for every piece of you that has broken, a new angle becomes visible. And what I know is that you are present and fighting, and that though you are struggling, you will not be broken. Wow. All right, I'm going to end there. Wow. Here's the bookmark. See? Can you see it? Days of Grace and Silence by Wallace. It's a great collection. I am going to continue doing this even though it's not very true crime related. All right, thank you.